Dr. Kalarix Voss adjusted the sensitivity of her tertiary eyes as she reviewed the morning's patient files at the Galactic Medical Center. Her crystalline exoskeleton caught the artificial sunlight streaming through the quantum glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the pristine white walls of her office. She'd earned her reputation as the sector's leading xenobiologist through 200 cycles of dedicated research and groundbreaking discoveries in cross-species viral treatments. Another boring day of routine checkups, she muttered to herself, her mandibles clicking in mild annoyance. The thought had barely formed when the emergency alert system blared to life, bathing her office in pulsing red light. Attention all medical personnel. Code Nexus. Repeat, Code Nexus. This is not a drill. Dr. Voss sprang from her ergonomic hover chair, her crystalline form vibrating with sudden alertness. Code Nexus? That was impossible. The last recorded case of the Nexus virus had been contained 50 cycles ago in the Andromeda quarantine zone. Location, she demanded, her voice sharp as she rushed through the corridor, fellow medical staff darting out of her way. Emergency Bay 7, the AI responded smoothly. Patient arrived via unauthorized shuttlecraft, showing anomalous readings. Dr. Voss's analytical mind was already racing through the known symptoms of Nexus infection: cellular deterioration, neural pathway collapse, systematic organ failure, when she burst through the doors of Emergency Bay 7. The sight that greeted her stopped her dead in her tracks. A being lay on the biobed, surrounded by a containment field. But it wasn't the standard death pallor of a Nexus victim that caught her attention. The patient's skin was a peculiar shade of brown, with no signs of the characteristic purple lesions. 2 eyes instead of the standard 3 to 5. No exoskeleton, no protective scales, just soft, vulnerable flesh. What species is this, she demanded, her mandibles twitching with scientific curiosity. Human, answered Dr. Raxon, her colleague, who was staring at the medical readouts with all 4 of his eyes wide in disbelief. Female, approximately 30 local Earth years. And doctor, you need to see these readings. Dr. Voss glided to the monitoring station, her crystalline fingers dancing across the holographic display. The numbers couldn't be right. According to every known medical text in the galaxy, any organic being infected with the Nexus virus had approximately 6 hours before complete systemic failure. This human had been infected for at least 72 hours, according to the viral load in her bloodstream. That's not possible, Dr. Voss whispered, running the scan again. The virus should have liquefied her internal organs by now. How is she still alive? The human's vital signs were stable. Elevated, yes, but nowhere near the critical levels they should be. Her immune system wasn't just fighting the virus, it was adapting to it, learning from it, evolving strategies to combat it in real time. Get me a full genetic workup, cellular analysis, and immune response profile, Dr. Voss ordered, her professional demeanor barely masking her excitement. And someone contact the Xenobiology Research Division. Tell them to clear their schedule. We may have just stumbled upon the most significant medical discovery in the last 1,000 cycles. As her team scrambled to comply, Dr. Voss found herself drawn closer to the containment field, studying the unconscious human with newfound fascination. In all her years of treating patients across hundreds of species, she'd never seen anything like this. Humans were considered a primitive species, barely space-capable, relegated to their tiny corner of the galaxy. Yet here was one, defying everything she thought she knew about viral pathology. Well, human, she murmured, her mandibles forming what passed for a smile in her species. You're either going to make me famous or prove me insane. Perhaps both. The monitors beeped steadily, tracking the impossible battle taking place within the human cells. Outside the emergency bay, the Galactic Medical Center continued its normal routine, unaware that history was being made behind those sealed doors. Dr. Voss settled in for what promised to be the most interesting shift of her career. After all, it wasn't every day that a single patient challenged 2 centuries of medical knowledge. The human stirred on the biobed, her eyes fluttering open. Dr. Voss watched as confusion, then panic, then determined calm washed across her face in rapid succession. Fascinating emotional control, the doctor noted. Where am I? The human asked, her universal translator kicking in with only a slight delay. Last thing I remember, I was on my research vessel studying the artifact we found in the Nexus Nebula. You're at the Galactic Medical Center, Dr. Voss replied, keeping her voice steady despite her excitement. I'm Dr. Kalarix Voss. And you are? Maya Rodriguez, xenoarchaeologist, she answered, then coughed a harsh, wet sound that made Dr. Voss's instruments ping with activity. Did anyone else from my crew make it? Dr. Voss's mandibles clicked softly, her species equivalent of a sympathetic sigh. I'm sorry, Dr. Rodriguez. Your shuttle arrived with only you aboard. Our scans showed no other life signs in the sector where we found you. Maya closed her eyes, grief evident in the tension of her muscles. The virus took them all. It was so fast Captain Parker was the first. Then Dr. Winston, then. Yet here you are, interrupted Dr. Raxon, who had returned with a team of specialists. His tone carried clear skepticism. A member of a species with no registered immunity to Nexus 7, showing minimal symptoms after extended exposure. Dr. Voss shot him a warning glance with her tertiary eye. Dr. Rodriguez, we need to understand what happened. The Nexus 7 virus is one of the deadliest pathogens known to galactic medicine. It has a 100% mortality rate across all known species, usually within 6 hours of exposure. Maya sat up straighter, her scientific curiosity seemingly overriding her grief. Tell me about the virus. Maybe we can figure out why I'm different. Dr. Voss activated a holographic display, showing the molecular structure of Nexus 7. The virus particles glowed an ominous purple, their spike proteins rotating slowly in the air between them. Nexus 7 is unique among viruses, Dr. Voss explained. It doesn't just attack cells, it rewrites their basic functions, turning them into virus factories while simultaneously breaking down cellular walls. The process creates a cascade effect that should result in complete organic breakdown within hours. Should Maya raised an eyebrow, a uniquely human expression that fascinated Dr. Voss. Your cells are different, Dr. Voss said, bringing up another hologram showing Maya's cellular structure. When the virus attempts to rewrite your cellular functions, your cells appear to be learning from the attack, adapting, even using the virus's own mechanisms against it. That's impossible, Dr. Raxon interjected, his crystalline form vibrating with agitation. The Security Council classified Nexus 7 as a Class X pathogen specifically because no known species can develop immunity. It's why the Andromeda quarantine zone still exists after 50 cycles. Dr. Voss ignored him, focusing instead on Maya's reaction. The human was studying the holographic displays with intense concentration, occasionally nodding, as if confirming something to herself. The artifact we found, Maya said slowly. It was in an ancient medical facility. There were warnings carved into the walls about a great plague. We thought we were being careful with our containment protocols, but... She was interrupted by another coughing fit. This time, Dr. Voss's instruments captured something extraordinary. Look at this, she exclaimed, expanding a new hologram. Her immune system isn't just fighting the virus, it's evolving new responses in real time. I've never seen anything like it. The medical bay filled with more specialists, each drawn by the impossible readings. Soon, a dozen of the galaxy's finest medical minds were debating theories, running tests, and staring at Maya Rodriguez as if she were either a miracle or a very elaborate hoax. Perhaps, suggested one doctor, their gelatinous form rippling with excitement, humans evolved this capability due to their planet's unusually high pathogen diversity. Or it could be a result of their bizarre genetic tendency to hybridize with ancestral species, offered another, waving their sensory tentacles at the DNA analysis. Maya watched the scientific debate unfold with apparent amusement. On Earth, we have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Maybe we humans just took that a little too literally during our evolution. Dr. Voss found herself appreciating the human's ability to joke in the face of such circumstances. But a new alert from her instruments cut through the academic discussion like a plasma scalpel. The virus, she announced, mandibles tight with concern. It's mutating in response to Dr. Rodriguez's immune system, and the new strain, it's becoming airborne. The room fell silent. Even through the containment field, they could hear Maya's breathing becoming more labored. The impossible patient had just become a potential pandemic threat to the entire medical station. Dr. Voss straightened to her full height, her crystalline form catching the light dramatically. Lock down this sector. No one in or out without my direct authorization. And get me everything we have on human immunology. If we're going to survive this, we need to understand exactly what makes Maya Rodriguez's immune system so special. As her colleagues rushed to comply, Dr. Voss caught Maya's eye. The human gave her a weak smile. "Ready to make history, doctor?" "My dear Dr. Rodriguez," Voss replied, her mandibles forming a grim smile. "I have a feeling we already have. The next 48 hours in the quarantine zone became a masterclass in human resilience." "Doctor." Voss barely left her station, her crystalline fingers dancing across holographic displays as she compared Maya's immune response to every known species in the galactic database. "This is extraordinary," she announced to her team, projecting a three-dimensional model of Maya's blood sample. "Look at how the white blood cells are behaving. They're not just attacking the virus, they're documenting it." The hologram zoomed in, showing cellular structures that defied conventional medical wisdom. Maya's immune system was treating the deadly Nexus 7 virus like a training exercise, creating detailed molecular memories of each viral mutation and developing countermeasures in real time. "You know what this reminds me of?" Maya said from her bio bed, her voice hoarse but amused. "There's this earth animal called the honey badger. Nothing can kill it because it just adapts to whatever tries." Dr. Raxon, who had moved from skepticism to reluctant fascination, pulled up comparative data from other species. "The crystalline entities of Rigel 7 have the strongest natural immunity in the galaxy. Or they did, until now. Their immune response takes 47 hours to adapt to new pathogens. Humans are doing it in minutes." "But how?" Dr. Voss demanded, mandibles clicking rapidly in excitement. "What makes humans so different?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Nexel, a junior researcher with a specialty in evolutionary biology, noticed something in Maya's genetic structure that everyone else had overlooked. "It's not just the immune system," she announced, her phosphorescent skin glowing brighter with excitement. "Look at the human genetic code. It's full of mistakes. Fragments of ancient viruses, bacterial DNA, even primitive parasitic organisms. Their entire genome is a museum of past infections." Dr. Voss rushed to verify the findings, her tertiary eye widening at the implications. "She's right. Humans didn't just survive these infections, they incorporated them. Every plague, every pandemic, every microscopic invader, they all left their mark. And instead of weakening the species, it made them stronger." Maya laughed, then winced. "So you're saying we're basically walking evolutionary scrapbooks?" "That tracks. Earth's kind of trying to kill us all the time. We just got used to it." The medical team worked around the clock, documenting every aspect of Maya's condition. They watched in amazement as her body turned the virus's own reproductive mechanism against it, using the viral proteins to create increasingly effective antibodies. "In most species," Dr. Voss explained during one of their many recording sessions, the Nexus 7 virus overwhelms the immune system before it can develop any meaningful response. But humans treat it like a sparring partner. They learn its moves, counter them, and then remember everything for next time. Dr. Raxon, who had been analyzing Maya's neural patterns, made another startling discovery. The adaptation isn't just physical. Their neural pathways actually reconfigure under stress. Every survival situation literally makes them smarter about surviving the next one. "That explains so much about human history," Maya mumbled, half asleep but still engaged in the research. "We're too stubborn to know when we're supposed to die." Dr. Voss found herself spending more time talking with Maya between tests. The human's perspective on survival and adaptation was unlike anything she'd encountered in her 200 cycles of medical practice. "On our world," Voss explained, "evolution favored protective crystalline structures and redundant organ systems. We survive by being incredibly difficult to damage in the first place." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Earth took a different approach. Instead of armor, we got adaptability. Instead of redundancy, we got regeneration. We're basically held together with duct tape and spite, but it works." The breakthrough came during hour 72. Dr. Voss was reviewing the latest batch of test results when she noticed something remarkable. The virus wasn't just failing to kill Maya anymore, it was dying. "Look at this," she called to her team, projecting the latest scan. "Her immune system isn't just neutralizing the virus. It's systematically dismantling it, using its own protein structures as raw materials for antibodies. I've never seen anything like this level of biological efficiency." Maya had developed a fever, but her vital signs remained stable. More importantly, her body was now producing compounds that actively destroyed the virus, breaking it down into harmless proteins that could be easily eliminated. So Maya asked between measured breaths, "Am I still going to accidentally start a pandemic?" Dr. Voss checked the latest atmospheric readings. Quite the opposite, actually. Your immune response has made the virus evolutionarily unstable. Even if it becomes airborne, it's now too weakened to pose a serious threat to anyone. You've essentially turned one of the deadliest pathogens in galactic history into a case of the common cold. The implications were staggering. Not only had a human survived the unsurvivable, but she'd done it in a way that could revolutionize viral treatment across the galaxy. Dr. Voss felt her crystalline form vibrating with pure scientific joy. "Dr. Rodriguez," she said formally, all three eyes focused on her patient, "how would you feel about collaborating on a paper? I believe we're about to rewrite every medical text in the known universe." Maya grinned weakly. "Only if you tell me more about your species' crystalline biology." Fair trade, right? Knowledge for knowledge. Dr. Voss found herself making the clicking sound that passed for laughter among her people. Trust a human to turn even a near-death experience into a learning opportunity. She was beginning to understand why this seemingly fragile species had survived everything their harsh world had thrown at them. They weren't just survivors. They were adapters, learners, evolvers. Every brush with death made them a little harder to kill, a little faster to respond, a little more prepared for the next challenge. "You know," Dr. Raxon commented later, reviewing their findings, "maybe we should be grateful humans are so focused on exploration and discovery. Can you imagine if they decided to become conquerors instead? They'd be practically unkillable." Dr. Voss watched Maya chatting with the medical staff, already planning future research projects despite her ordeal. "I don't think we need to worry about that. They're too busy trying to learn everything they can about the universe to bother conquering it." But privately, she made a note to update the galactic medical databases. Under humans, she added a new warning caution exponential adaptation to all survival threats. "Do not underestimate." The alarms blared through the quarantine zone, their urgent pulse matching the racing of Dr. Voss's crystalline heart. The situation had deteriorated faster than anyone could have predicted. Maya's fever had spiked to dangerous levels, and worse, 3 members of the medical staff had started showing symptoms. "This makes no sense," Dr. Raxon muttered, his 4 eyes fixed on the latest viral analysis. The pathogen was weakening. How did it suddenly become more aggressive? Dr. Voss's mandibles clicked in frustration as she studied Maya's latest readings. The human's remarkable immune system was still fighting, but even it seemed to be struggling against this new mutation. Maya lay on the bio-bed, her skin flushed with fever, mumbling calculations and theories even in her delirium. "The virus," Maya gasped between labored breaths, "it's learning too. Using my adaptations against me." Dr. Voss rushed to Maya's bedside, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across the medical equipment. "Save your strength, Dr. Rodriguez. We're working on a solution." But Maya grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "No, listen. It's not just adapting to me. It's taking the mechanisms my immune system developed and weaponizing them." The implications hit Dr. Voss like a quantum blast. She spun toward her team, her voice sharp with urgency. "New theory. The virus isn't just mutating randomly. It's incorporating the human adaptive response into its own structure. That's why it's affecting the medical staff. Now it's using Maya's immune system as a blueprint to break through other species' defenses." The quarantine zone erupted into frenzied activity. Dr. Nexel, who had already fallen ill, managed to croak out readings from her bio-bed. Station security reports similar symptoms appearing in the civilian sector. Containment compromised. Dr. Voss felt the weight of thousands of lives settling onto her crystalline shoulders. The Galactic Medical Center housed over 20,000 beings from hundreds of species. If this enhanced version of Nexus 7 got loose in the general population. "We need a cure," she announced, her voice cutting through the panic. "Not just a treatment, a complete neutralizing agent. And we need it within the next 6 hours, or we're looking at an extinction-level event." The remaining healthy staff scrambled to their stations. Dr. Raxon, despite his initial skepticism about humans, now worked feverishly to decode the virus's new structure. "If we can understand how it's using the human adaptive mechanism, maybe we can reverse engineer a counteragent." Maya's voice, weak but determined, carried across the room. "Use me." Dr. Voss turned to her patient, all 3 eyes narrowing. "What?" "My immune system," Maya explained, pushing herself up despite the obvious pain. It's not just fighting the virus. It's playing chess with it. Every adaptation, every mutation, they're all moves in a game. And games have winning strategies. Dr. Voss's tertiary eye widened as understanding dawned. You're saying we should let your immune system keep adapting, even though it's making you sicker? Maya nodded, a grim smile on her fever-flushed face. Evolution is just a really long game of survival, and humans were really good at games. The next 4 hours were a blur of activity. Dr. Voss and her team worked relentlessly, tracking every microscopic change in Maya's blood chemistry as her immune system continued its deadly dance with the virus. More staff members fell ill. The quarantine zone's air scrubbers worked overtime to handle the increasing viral load. "Look at this," Dr. Raxon suddenly shouted, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement. Her antibodies, they're not just fighting the current viral strain. They're attacking all possible mutations simultaneously. Dr. Voss rushed to his station, her mandibles clicking rapidly as she processed the data. It's like her immune system is running combat simulations, fighting not just what the virus is, but what it could become. Maya's temperature had reached dangerous levels, but she was still conscious, still fighting. "That's how we survived on Earth," she whispered, "not by being the strongest, but by being able to imagine and counter every possible threat." The breakthrough came with less than an hour of projected survival time for the first infected staff members. Dr. Voss stared at the latest test results in amazement. "The virus. It's burning itself out," she announced. "By trying to adapt to Maya's immune response, it's making itself unsustainable. Her body isn't just fighting the virus, it's forcing it to evolve itself to death." But victory came with a price. Maya's vital signs were crashing, her body pushed to its limits by the prolonged battle. The virus might be dying, but it seemed determined to take its greatest opponent with it. Dr. Voss faced the most difficult decision of her medical career. They had the cure. Maya's evolved antibodies could save everyone infected, but extracting enough antibodies in her weakened state might kill her. Maya, somehow still conscious, made the decision for her. "Do it," she commanded, her voice barely a whisper. "Save them all. After all, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right?" Dr. Voss looked at her patient, this remarkable human who had turned certain death into a fighting chance and made her choice. The fate of thousands now rested on the resilience of one impossibly stubborn species. Dr. Voss's crystalline hands moved with practiced precision as she extracted the antibodies from Maya's blood. Every second counted now, with the human's vital signs growing weaker and the number of infected station personnel climbing rapidly. "Remarkable," she murmured, watching Maya's antibodies under the quantum microscope. "The molecular structure is unlike anything in our medical records. The antibodies aren't just attacking the virus, they're completely rewriting its genetic code." Dr. Raxon, now fighting off symptoms himself, monitored the synthesis process. "The replication rate is unprecedented. These human antibodies are practically weaponized. They're not just destroying the virus, they're turning it into more antibodies." Maya lay unconscious, her body pushed beyond normal human limits, but her immune system continued its relentless work. The monitoring equipment showed her cellular activity operating at levels that should have been impossible for any organic being. "Begin distribution of the treatment," Dr. Voss ordered, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Start with the critical cases first, and someone get me a direct neural stimulator. We're not losing our patient today." The cure moved through the station like a benevolent plague of its own. Where the modified Nexus 7 virus had brought beings to their knees, Maya's engineered antibodies restored them to health within hours. Dr. Voss watched the recovery statistics with one eye while focusing the other two on her original patient. "Come on, Maya," she whispered, adjusting the neural stimulator. "You humans are supposedly too stubborn to die. Prove it." As if in response to the challenge, Maya's vital signs began to stabilize. Her fever, which had been hovering at lethal levels, started to drop. Dr. Voss's mandibles clicked in relief as she watched the human's remarkable physiology rebuild itself. "Got to hand it to these humans," Dr. Raxon commented, his own symptoms rapidly disappearing under the treatment. "They turned one of the deadliest viruses in galactic history into a cure. Who does that?" "A species that evolved on a death world," Dr. Voss replied, her scientific fascination evident in her voice. "They didn't just survive their planet's attempts to kill them. They turned every threat into an advantage. Their entire biology is based on the principle of turning weakness into strength. Maya's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on the crystalline form of Dr. Voss. "Did we win?" she asked, her voice rough but growing stronger. When Dr. Voss made the clicking sound of laughter. "Dr. Rodriguez, you just revolutionized galactic medicine. Your antibodies aren't just fighting Nexus 7. Early tests show they're effective against dozens of other viral strains. You may have just created a universal viral defense system." Maya managed a weak smile. "So humans aren't just primitive beings anymore." Primitive Dr. Voss projected a hologram of Maya's enhanced antibodies. "Your immune system just did something our best medical AI couldn't figure out in 50 cycles. You turned a planet-killing virus into a medical breakthrough. I'd say humans are anything but primitive." The recovery throughout the station was nothing short of miraculous. Within 24 hours, every infected patient had fully recovered. The modified virus, overwhelmed by the human-engineered antibodies, had been completely eradicated. Dr. Voss spent hours documenting every aspect of the cure's development, knowing this would change medical science forever. But more than the scientific implications, she found herself fascinated by what this revealed about humanity as a species. "You know what amazes me most," she said to Maya, who was now sitting up and already talking about returning to her archaeological work. "It's not just your physical resilience. It's your entire approach to survival. Where most species try to avoid threats, humans learn from them. You don't just endure, you adapt, improve, and come back stronger." Maya shrugged, a very human gesture that still fascinated Dr. Voss. "That's just how we're built. Earth threw everything it had at us: predators, diseases, natural disasters. We couldn't hide in protective crystals or develop redundant organs. We had to learn to roll with the punches and get back up smarter." Dr. Voss felt her respect for this seemingly fragile species growing exponentially. "The Galactic Medical Council will want to study this in detail. Would you consider staying on as a research partner? There's so much we could learn from human biology." "Only if you promise to share what we learn with everyone," Maya countered. "Knowledge should be like a virus, spreading and adapting for the benefit of all." Dr. Voss's mandibles formed her species' version of a warm smile. "I believe this is the beginning of a very productive collaboration. Though I must ask, is everything on Earth really trying to kill you?" Maya laughed, her strength visibly returning. "Oh, you have no idea. Wait until I tell you about this little thing called the platypus. Now that's an example of evolution with a sense of humor." As Maya launched into another fascinating story about Earth's deadly yet entertaining wildlife, Dr. Voss made a mental note to update the galactic species registry. Under humans, she would add warning: extreme evolutionary adaptability, tendency to convert lethal threats into advantages, approach with respect and anticipation of surprises. After all, any species that could laugh in the face of death and turn it into a teaching opportunity deserved both caution and admiration. The Galaxy, Dr. Voss suspected, was about to become a much more interesting place. 6 months after the Nexus 7 incident, the Galactic Medical Center had undergone a transformation. The formerly pristine white walls now displayed vibrant educational holograms about human biology, and a new wing dedicated to adaptive medicine was under construction. Dr. Kalarix Voss stood at the podium of the Grand Medical Assembly, her crystalline form gleaming under the spotlight as she addressed representatives from over 1,000 worlds. "The Maya Protocol," she announced, her mandibles clicking with pride, "has now been successfully implemented in 300 major medical facilities across the galaxy. Thanks to our ongoing collaboration with human medical scientists, we've developed treatments for 72 previously incurable viral diseases." In the front row, Maya Rodriguez beamed. She had officially joined the center's research staff, heading up the new Department of Adaptive Medical Technologies. Her near-death experience had sparked a revolution in galactic medicine. But perhaps more significant than the medical breakthroughs, Dr. Voss continued, is what we've learned about the nature of survival itself. Humans have taught us that true resilience isn't about being impervious to harm, it's about learning, adapting, and emerging stronger from every challenge. The assembly erupted in applause as Dr. Voss projected a final hologram, a comparison of galactic survival rates before and after the implementation of human-inspired medical protocols. The numbers spoke for themselves. Later, in Dr. Voss's office, she and Maya shared a quiet moment of reflection. The human sipped her coffee, while the xenobiologist enjoyed a crystal nutrient solution. "Did you ever imagine," Maya asked, "that nearly dying would lead to all this?" Dr. Voss made her clicking laugh. "Humans never just survive, do they? You have to turn every disaster into an opportunity for growth." "Speaking of growth," Maya grinned, pulling up a holographic report. "Wait until you see what we discovered about human bone regeneration. Your orthopedics department is going to have a field day with this one." As they dove into another fascinating discussion about human biological quirks, Dr. Voss noticed a new message from the Galactic Security Council. They had officially upgraded humanity's status from developing species to advanced medical partners. Dr. Voss smiled, remembering how she'd once thought of humans as primitive. Now, watching Maya excitedly explain yet another bizarre aspect of human physiology, she understood the truth. Sometimes the most remarkable advances came from the most unexpected sources. The galaxy had learned an important lesson: never underestimate a species that treated survival as an art form and adaptation as a way of life.